Something has changed in the air over the last few years. We can feel it in the conversations people are having online and in person. Across the political spectrum, more people are beginning to agree on one thing: trust in the system is broken. Between 2020 and 2025, the U.S. has witnessed a rapid unraveling of public faith in once trusted institutions, from public health authorities to courts, from elections to the media. At the same time, the middle class, the traditional bedrock of American stability, is shrinking. People are working harder, paying more, and getting less in return. And in this vacuum of trust and opportunity, a growing number are looking for alternatives. And that is where decentralized systems come in. This video isn't just about crypto, though that is a big part of it. It's about why people are losing faith in centralized structures altogether, and why that loss of trust might not be a dead end, but a turning point. When institutions fail, individuals start looking for tools that give them more control over their money, their data, their communities, and their futures. So we're going to walk through three things: the key events that shattered public trust, how the middle class has been squeezed into this awakening, and why decentralized systems, especially cryptocurrencies, are becoming the new toolkit for people who no longer believe the old system is working in their favor. But most importantly, we'll talk about how to engage with these tools in a way that aligns with the original ethos of crypto: decentralization, privacy, and individual responsibility. Let's get into it. To understand where this distrust comes from, we need to look at what's happened over the last even 5 years. Not from a partisan lens, but through the eyes of everyday people watching their institutions fail to live up to their promises. Let's start with 2020, the scamdemic. The pandemic response between 2020 and 2022 shattered confidence in public health. At first, we were told to follow the science, but the science kept changing, often with contradictory messages. Lockdowns were enforced for some gatherings and ignored for others. Vaccine mandates were rolled out with little room for debate, while censorship of dissenting voices made people question what was being hidden. Trust in scientists dropped from 87% in 2020 to just 73% by 2023. When censorship became part of the response, people started to connect the dots. Institutions weren't just failing, they were silencing critics. Next came the 2020 US presidential election and the events of January 6th. Whether or not you believe there was election fraud, millions of Americans did and still do. That belief alone created a split in how people view the electoral system. When the Capitol riot happened, it only deepened the polarization. By 2024, trust in government had plummeted. On social media, the term rigged became a shorthand for the feeling that democratic processes were no longer trustworthy. Around the same time, the Black Lives Matter protests and subsequent riots revealed another layer of inconsistency. $2 billion in damages were reported, and while some cities saw their police budgets slashed, others ramped up their enforcement later with no clear explanation. People trusted that different rules applied to different groups depending on the political moment, and that fed the perception that enforcement was no longer about fairness, it was about narrative control. Then came Trump's indictments between 2023 and 2024. For supporters, they weren't seen as justice, they were seen as persecution. Many believed the Department of Justice had been weaponized. By 2024, nearly a third of Americans distrusted both political parties. The system felt broken on all sides. Even the Supreme Court wasn't immune. The Dobbs decision in 2022, which overturned Roe v. Wade, ignited massive backlash. Add to that the ethics scandals involving justices like Clarence Thomas, and trust in the court fell to historic lows. Only 39% of Americans trusted the government to do what's right on domestic issues by the end of 2022. Foreign policy didn't help. The 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan, especially the images of chaos and the deaths of 13 U.S. service members, left many wondering how the most powerful military in the world could botch something so badly. It was a harsh reminder of government incompetence on a global stage. Then there was the Russian collusion narrative, pushed heavily from 2017 through 2020 and later debunked by the Mueller report. Conservatives saw this as a media-driven smear campaign, and even moderates began to question whether the media could be trusted at all. Pew Research found that by 2019, nearly 70% of Americans believed misinformation was directly linked to their distrust in government. Social media censorship only accelerated this distrust. Trump's Twitter ban in 2021, COVID-related content moderation across the platforms, the growing sense that tech companies were working hand in hand with government agencies to control speech. For many, it felt like free expression was under attack. And the solution? Well, people started seeking decentralized alternatives, platforms where they couldn't be silenced. Economic pressure added more fuel. Inflation peaked at 9.1% in 2022, and real wages didn't keep up. Housing became unaffordable, grocery bills spiked. The middle class started to feel like it was being hollowed out, working harder and falling behind. And politicians seemed more concerned with funding wars abroad than fixing problems at home. And then in 2024, things got even darker. There were 2 reported assassination attempts on Donald Trump. Whether you support him or not, political violence at that level shakes people to their core. It felt like something was spiraling out of control. Finally, one of the most overlooked but telling moments came in 2025. Trump, now back in office, chose not to release further Epstein files, despite widespread expectation from his base. Many saw it as a betrayal. The idea that both sides of the aisle were protecting the same elites suddenly didn't feel like a conspiracy theory. It felt like business as usual. So when you stack all of this together, the censorship, the hypocrisy, the broken promises, and the perception of elite protectionism, it's no wonder public trust is at an all-time low. And when trust erodes to this degree, people don't just get angry. They start looking for ways to opt out. And that's where decentralized systems enter the conversation. While political distrust grabs the headlines, there's another quiet crisis reshaping the foundation of society: the disappearance of the middle class. So let's define what we mean by middle class. According to Pew Research, this typically refers to households earning between 2/3 and twice the national median income. Back in 1971, about 61% of Americans fell into that category, but by 2023, that number had dropped to just 50%. That's not a small shift. It's a structural collapse of the social tier that once empowered the economy and kept political extremes in check. So what happened? Well, start with inflation. Between 2021 and 2024, the cost of living soared. Inflation hit a peak of 9.1% in 2022, the highest in over 4 decades. Groceries, gas, insurance, education, they all went up. Meanwhile, wages didn't keep pace. Middle-class workers found themselves spending more just to maintain the same quality of life. Housing had been another massive pressure point. From 2020 to 2024, home prices rose by nearly 50%. For many families, especially younger ones, the dream of home ownership has become just that: a dream. Renting isn't much better. Monthly rents in many US cities now rival mortgage payments with no equity in return. And don't forget the aftershocks of the pandemic. Small businesses, the backbone of the middle class, were hit hardest by the lockdowns. Jobs in retail, hospitality, and services evaporated overnight. And while corporations got bailouts, everyday families got breadcrumbs, and people noticed. Now, all of this feeds directly into political and institutional distrust. Because when families are working harder, falling behind, and watching the wealthy grow wealthier, it starts to feel like the system is rigged. And when that frustration isn't addressed, it turns into resentment. Resentment towards government, toward media, toward the institutions that were supposed to have your back. This economic squeeze is part of what's driving populist energy in both directions. You see it in Trump's re-election, backed by voters who feel abandoned. You see it in the rise of grassroots political movements on both sides. You see it in how often middle-class frustrations go viral, not because they're rare, but because they're painfully relatable. And for many people, these economic pressures are what finally push them to seek alternatives. Alternatives to banks that charge fees while denying loans. Alternatives to fiat currencies that lose value while savings are wiped out. Alternatives to a political class that seems more interested in protecting corporate donors than fixing the economy. That's where decentralized systems, especially cryptocurrencies, really start to matter. DeFi, or decentralized finance, has seen major adoption from middle-class users who feel locked out of the traditional banking system. With just a smartphone, they can access loans, earn yield, or invest globally without a banker's approval. By 2024, the total value locked in DeFi protocols reached $100 billion, and a growing share of that is from middle-class users taking back financial control. Bitcoin, too, has become a kind of protest asset. Between 2021 and 2024, Bitcoin ownership among Americans aged 30 to 50 grew by 20%. These aren't teenagers chasing meme coins. They're working professionals looking for a hedge against inflation and instability. Even small business owners, the last holdouts of economic independence, are adopting crypto for payments, not just because it's trendy, but because it sidesteps bank fees, credit card processors, and regulatory red tape. The middle class is not disappearing quietly, it's pushing back. And increasingly, that push is directed toward decentralized tools that offer transparency, autonomy, and fairness. Everything that traditional systems have failed to deliver. This economic pain is not just a backdrop, it's the driver. It's the reason why trust is eroding, and it's why so many are turning to decentralized systems, not out of idealism, but out of necessity. And that necessity might just be the seed of something powerful. It's easy to get lost in the darkness of distrust, division, and economic hardship. But what if all of this, the broken systems, the disillusionment, the disappearance of the middle class, is actually setting the stage for something better? This isn't just about rebellion, it's about building. And the beauty of decentralized systems is that they offer exactly what centralized ones have failed to deliver time and time again: transparency, accountability, access, and control. So first, let's talk about civic engagement. In an era when most people feel unheard by governments and ignored by corporations, distrust can be a surprisingly powerful motivator. People are showing up, not always in the ways the system expects, but in ways that matter, joining online communities, calling out corruption, demanding accountability, and building alternatives. Every X post questioning the official narrative, every viral video exposing hypocrisy, every thread teaching people how to take custody of their crypto, it's part of a new kind of activism. It's decentralized, it's global, and it's growing. We're also seeing serious momentum in crypto adoption. By 2024, over half of Americans owned some form of cryptocurrency. That's not a fringe trend, that's mainstream. Stablecoins like USDC are offering a real alternative to bank accounts. They're fast, borderless, and transparent, but watch out for that control that could probably come in. Because people are starting to understand the surveillance risks of central bank digital currencies, decentralized options are becoming even more attractive. That's definitely a trend I think we should all be paying attention to. DeFi is another area exploding in relevance. From 2020 to 2024, the total value locked in DeFi protocols jumped from $20 billion to $100 billion. And that's not just crypto native whales driving that growth. It's regular people, teachers, nurses, freelancers, small business owners, anyone who's fed up with being denied access to basic financial tools by legacy systems. And then there's DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. These are more than buzzwords. They're working experiments with transparent community-led governance. Instead of political parties behind closed doors, DAOs offer open code and collective voting. Projects like MakerDAO and Constitution DAO have shown what's possible when people organize with a shared purpose and don't have to ask permission to build. But it doesn't stop there. Blockchain is being used to bring transparency to everything from voting to public records, land titles, court documents, government spending. All of it can be tracked, verified, and audited. That's the kind of radical transparency that's only possible when power is decentralized. Privacy tech is evolving too. Privacy coins like Monero give people the freedom to transact without being tracked. That's a great thing. Decentralized identity platforms like Uport put users in charge of their own data. Blockchain-based social media ensures speech can't be censored by the whims of a single CEO or government agency. And in the broader world, you're seeing the same decentralized spirit taking root. Local communities are experimenting with their own blockchain-based currencies, open source technologies, peer-to-peer energy grids, and Web3 tools are building resilience where top-down systems have failed. This is what happens when people stop waiting for permission and start building solutions themselves. The same middle class that's being squeezed is also rising, not with protest signs alone, but with hardware wallets, DAO proposals, and privacy-preserving code. They're learning, teaching, creating, they're opting out. So yes, the system is cracked, trust is broken, the old models are failing, but the answer isn't despair, it's decentralization. The more people recognize the failures of centralized systems, the more they'll embrace technologies that put power back in their hands. And that's not just an opportunity, it's a movement. It's not enough to just use crypto. How we use it matters. Because the very systems we're trying to break free from, centralized surveillance, censorship, financial exclusion, can creep right back in if we're not intentional about how we participate in this new economy. So let's talk about how to adopt cryptocurrency in a way that actually upholds the value it was built on: decentralization, autonomy, privacy, and personal responsibility. So let's start with decentralization. Using non-custodial wallets is one of the simplest yet most important things a person can do, and well worth learning how to do. When funds are stored on centralized exchanges, they're essentially IOUs. But with a wallet like MetaMask, Sparrow, or a hardware device like Trezor or Bitbox, the private keys stay in your hands. That's real ownership. That's self-sovereignty. Also consider the networks you support. Fully decentralized blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum offer far more resilience and censorship resistance than centralized or semi-centralized chains. If the goal is to opt out of legacy control, start with protocols that are truly permissionless. Then there's autonomy. The point of crypto isn't just better returns, it's freedom from gatekeepers. Engaging with DeFi platforms like Uniswap, Aave, or Curve allows peer-to-peer transactions without banks, without delays, and without permission. Want to lend out your assets on your terms? Want to swap tokens directly across borders? That's what DeFi is built for. And if you're ready to go deeper, consider running your own node. Whether it's Bitcoin Core or an Ethereum validator, running a node strengthens the network and gives you a direct connection to the blockchain. There's no middleman required whatsoever in that situation. Now, let's talk about privacy. Financial privacy isn't about hiding something. It's about having the right to keep personal information personal. There's a difference between keeping something private and keeping something secret. Privacy coins like Monero and Zcash enable this. So do mixers and second layer tools like Lightning Network, which offer added privacy for everyday Bitcoin transactions. Think about it. Would you want every transaction you've ever made, what you bought, where, and when, permanently visible to anyone online? Of course not. And yet, that is the default on many public blockchains unless privacy is prioritized. Responsibility is also non-negotiable. Self-custody is empowering, but it also means there's no customer service number to call if something goes wrong. That's why education is so important. Know how to secure a seed phrase, understand how phishing attacks work, and always verify smart contract addresses through tools like Etherscan before interacting. Freedom without responsibility is a recipe for chaos, but with the right tools and knowledge, individuals can take full control over their digital assets without relying on anyone else, and it's a beautiful thing to do. Finally, bring crypto into your real life. Spend it, save it, teach it. Use Bitcoin with Lightning for quick, low-fee payments. Allocate a portion of your savings into Bitcoin as an inflation hedge. Join a DAO funding local initiatives, or launch your own using platforms like Aragon or Gnosis Safe. And don't keep that knowledge to yourself. Share it with your community. Host a workshop. Post a guide. Start a conversation. Platforms like Library and Odyssey make it easy to educate others without needing permission from centralized social networks. This is how the decentralized revolution becomes real, not through headlines or hashtags, but through day-to-day actions that reflect the values this technology was built on. The tools are here, the knowledge is spreading. The choice is yours. It's easy to get swept up in the optimism, and there's plenty to be hopeful about. But if this movement is going to last, it has to be built on a foundation of realism. Cryptocurrencies and decentralized systems aren't silver bullets. They won't magically fix decades of institutional distrust or economic decay. They're tools, powerful ones, but only as effective as the people who wield them. Let's start with the biggest challenge: volatility. The price of Bitcoin can swing 30% in a month. In 2021 alone, Bitcoin dropped from $64,000 to under $30,000 in a matter of weeks. That level of instability can shake out newcomers and devastate savings if risk isn't managed properly, especially if people are fearfully selling. For middle-class users already under pressure, that kind of exposure can do more harm than good without a long-term mindset and proper asset allocation. Then there's regulation. From the SEC's crackdown on exchanges to rumors of future central bank digital currencies replacing cash altogether, the regulatory environment remains murky and potentially hostile. For crypto to survive and thrive, as it was actually built to do, users must stay informed and politically engaged. Otherwise, the same systems of control that people are trying to escape can simply be rebuilt atop this new infrastructure. Accessibility is another hurdle. The crypto world is still far too complex for the average person. Concepts like seed phrases, gas fees, and hardware wallets can be overwhelming, especially for those with limited technical literacy. If crypto is going to serve the middle class, not just early adopters and whales, user experience needs to dramatically improve. Simplifying access without compromising on decentralization is the challenge ahead. And let's not ignore the dark side of decentralization. With no central authority, scams, rug pulls, and misinformation run rampant. We've seen billions lost to faulty smart contracts and exploitive founders. In the absence of regulation, trust has to be rebuilt in new ways through education, code audits, community accountability, and transparent governance. But here's the flip side. Crypto's greatest strength is that it doesn't require permission. It doesn't wait for legacy institutions to reform. It doesn't need votes from a boardroom or signatures from a senator. It offers a parallel path, one where users opt in voluntarily, take ownership, and build alternatives that reflect their values. And that's what I mean when I say you have to be politically engaged. For a middle class that has been squeezed, sidelined, and ignored, that autonomy really matters. And yes, there will be growing pains, there will be risks, but that's true of any meaningful revolution. And trust me, this one is worth it. The question isn't whether crypto is perfect, it's whether it's a better bet than trusting the same institutions that helped us get here. For millions, the answer is increasingly yes. The last few years have made one thing painfully clear. The systems we were told to trust often serve themselves first. But out of that disillusionment comes a new path, one where power can be reclaimed through decentralized tools. Crypto isn't just an investment, it's a gateway to privacy, autonomy, and financial independence, especially for those who've been let down by the old system. If you're ready to take the next step, learningcrypto.com is where you start. It's not about hype or speculation. It's about understanding what these tools are, how they work, and how they can empower you. Whether you're brand new or deep in the space, you'll find the knowledge and support you need to navigate this shift with confidence. Because the future isn't waiting, it's already being built.